Hi friends, I'm Max Lucado. Welcome to Fresh Hope. I hope you're enjoying this deep dive into the Beatitudes that Jesus shared in his Sermon on the Mount. This series of videos is based on my book, The Applause of Heaven. And today we're going to talk about the Beatitude that will set you free to live a life of joy. Do you have a hole in your heart? Perhaps the wound is old. A parent abused you, a teacher slighted you, a business partner bailed out, leaving you a choice of bills or bankruptcy, and you're angry. Or perhaps the wound is fresh. The friend who owes you money just drove by in a new car. Your circle of friends escaped on a weekend getaway, and you weren't invited. The children you raised, well, they seem to have forgotten you exist, and you're hurt. Part of you is broken, the other part is bitter. Part of you wants to cry, part of you wants to fight. The tears you cry are hot because they come from your heart where a fire is burning, the fire of anger. And you're left with a decision. Do I put the fire out or heat it up? Do I let my hurts heal, or do I let them turn into hate? Resentment is when you let your hurt become hate. Resentment is when you allow what is eating at you to eat you up. Resentment is the deliberate decision to nurse the offense until it becomes a black, furry, growling grudge. Grudge is one of those words that defines itself. Its very sound betrays its meaning. Say it slowly. Grudge. It starts with a growl, grrr, like a bear coming out of hibernation or a mongrel defending his bone. Grrr. Being near a resentful person and petting a growling dog are equally enjoyable. Both are irritable. Both can be rabid. Add an M to the second part of the word grudge, and you'll see what grudge bearers throw: mud. It's not enough to accuse, the other person's character must be attacked. Remove a GR from the word grudge and replace it with SL, and you have the junk that grudge bearers trudge through: sludge, thick, ankle-deep resentment. No joyful skips through the meadows, just day after day of dragging through all the muck life has delivered. Are you allowing your hurts to turn into hates? If so, ask yourself, is it working? Has your resentment brought you relief, peace, or joy? Resentment is the cocaine of the emotions. It causes our blood to pump and our energy level to rise. But like cocaine, it demands increasingly larger and more frequent dosages. At some point, anger ceases to be an emotion. It becomes a driving force. A person bent on revenge moves further and further away from being able to forgive. For to be without the anger is to be without a source of energy. That helps explain the existence of the KKK, the skinheads, and other hate organizations. Members of these groups feed each other's anger, and that is why the resentful often appear unreasonable. They're addicted to their bitterness. They don't want to surrender their anger, for to do so would be to surrender their reason to live. Take bigotry from the racist, and what does he have left? Extract chauvinism from the sexist, and what remains? Resentment is like cocaine in another way, too. Cocaine can kill the addict, and anger can kill the angry. It can kill physically. A recent study by the National Institute of Health found that anger can cause blood vessels to constrict. Prolonged anger can cause permanent damage to blood vessels and can lead to cardiovascular disease. And anger can be spiritually fatal. It shrivels the soul. Hate is the rabid dog that turns on its owner. Revenge is the raging fire that consumes the arsonist. Bitterness is the trap that snares the hunter. And mercy is the choice that can set them all free. Blessed are the merciful, said Jesus in Matthew 5 and verse 7. Those who are merciful to others are the ones who are truly blessed. Why? Well, Jesus answers the question in the same verse. They will be shown mercy. The merciful, says Jesus, are shown mercy. They witness grace. They are blessed because they are testimonies to a greater goodness. Forgiving others allows us to see how God has forgiven us. The dynamic of giving grace is the key to understanding grace, for it is when we forgive others that we begin to feel what God feels. In Matthew 18, Jesus tells the story of a king who decided to close out all his accounts with those who worked for him. He called in his debtors and told them to pay. One man owed an amount too great to return, a debt that could never be repaid. But when the king saw the man and heard his story, his heart went out to him and he erased the debt. As the man was leaving the palace grounds, he encountered a fellow employee who owed him a small sum. He grabbed the debtor and choked him, demanding payment. And when the fellow begged for mercy, no mercy was granted. Instead, the one who had just been forgiven had his debtor thrown into jail. When word of this got to the king became livid. Verse 34 says, in anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. Could someone actually be forgiven a debt of millions and be unable to forgive a debt of hundreds? Could a person be set free and then imprison another? You don't have to be a theologian to answer those questions. You only have to look in the mirror. I mean, who among us has not begged God for mercy on Sunday, then demanded justice on Monday? Who hasn't served as a bottleneck instead of a conduit of God's love? Is there anyone who doesn't, as Romans 2:4 says, show contempt for the riches of God's kindness, tolerance, and patience, not realizing that God's kindness leads you toward repentance? Notice what God does when we withhold our compassion. He turns us over to be tortured by anger, bitterness, and revenge. Such is the punishment for the one who tastes God's grace but refuses to share it. But for the one who tastes God's grace and then gives it to others, the reward is blessed liberation. The prison door is thrown open, and the prisoner set free is yourself. Early in our marriage, my wife and I lived in Brazil as missionaries. While there, I made friends with Daniel. Daniel was big. He was a weightlifter and a weightlifting coach. The only thing bigger than Daniel's biceps was his heart. Let me tell you about a time his heart became tender. Daniel was living in the southern city of Porto Alegre. He worked at a gym and dreamed of owning his own. The bank agreed to finance the purchase if he could find someone to co-sign the note. His brother agreed. They filled out the paperwork and awaited approval. Everything went smoothly, and Daniel soon received a call from the bank telling him he could come and pick up the check. As soon as he got off work, he went to the bank. When the loan officer saw Daniel, he looked surprised and asked Daniel why he had come. Well, to pick up the check, Daniel explained. Well, that's funny, responded the banker. Your brother was in here earlier. He picked up the money and used it to retire the mortgage on his house. Well, Daniel was incensed. He never dreamed his own brother would trick him like that. He stormed over to his brother's house and pounded on the door. The brother answered the door with his daughter in his arms. He knew Daniel wouldn't hit him if he was holding a child. He was right. Daniel didn't hit him, but he promised his brother that if he ever saw him again, he would break his neck. Daniel went home, his big heart bruised and ravaged. He had no other choice but to go back to the gym and work to pay off the debt. A few months later, Daniel met a young American missionary named Alan Dutton. Alan befriended Daniel and taught him about Jesus. Daniel and his wife soon became Christians and devoted disciples. Though Daniel had been forgiven so much, he still found it impossible to forgive his brother. He didn't see his brother for 2 years. But an encounter was inevitable, and one day they ran into each other on a busy street. This is what happened in Daniel's words. I saw him, but he didn't see me, and I felt my fists clench and my face get hot. My initial impulse was to grab him around the throat and choke the life out of him. But as I looked into his face, my anger began to melt, for as I saw him, I saw the image of my Father. I saw my Father's eyes. I saw my Father's look. I saw my Father's expression. And as I saw my Father in his face, my enemy once again became my brother. Daniel walked toward him. The brother stopped, turned, and started to run, but he was too slow. Daniel reached out and grabbed his brother. The brother winced, expecting the worst. But rather than his throat being squeezed, he found himself embraced by Daniel's big arms. The two brothers stood in the middle of the river of people and wept. Daniel's words are worth repeating. When I saw the image of my Father in his face, my enemy became my brother. The next time you see or think of the one who broke your heart, look twice. Find the face of the God who forgives in the face of your enemy. And then, because God has forgiven you more than you'll ever be called to forgive another, set your enemy and yourself free. Allow the hole in your heart to heal. Blessed are the merciful. Friend, thank you for joining me as we continued our study of the astonishing message we call the Beatitudes. We will conclude this series next week, so don't miss it. May you find joy in knowing that the applause of heaven is ringing out just for you.